Now, post-lunch, we're getting into the third technical session of the day, which is about automated compliance, managing big data, tax revenue for government, and insights for big corporate decisions. Here, we will look into AI and blockchain-driven tools which are being deployed not only to prevent tax evasion, but also facilitation of taxpayers. To take the session forward, let me first invite the two anchors for the session, starting with Mr. Prakash Kumar, former CEO, GSTN. Mr. Prakash Kumar is the Chief Executive Officer at Wadhwani Institute for Technology and Policy, designed and executed large IT projects like GST for India, strategic consulting on innovative use of advanced technology for business transformation, and is a former CEO of GST Network. Is Mr. Prakash here? Thank you, sir. Moving on to inviting the next anchor for this session, that is Mr. Atul Gupta from Deloitte Touché Tohmatsu Limited. Mr. Atul is a partner at Deloitte with over 17 years of experience in IT advisory assignments and has extensive cyber and information security experience, along with focus on IT governance, technical security, IT auditing, and large IT projects. Thank you so much, Mr. Atul, for joining us. Let's move on and invite the panelists for the session onto the stage, starting with Mr. M K Sinha, CEO of GST Network. Mr. Sinha. Mr. Sinha is a 1993 batch IRS officer. He's working as the CEO of GST Network and played a key role in implementation of GST as Joint Secretary through to Ministry of Finance. A very warm welcome, Mr. Sinha. Moving on, the next panelist for the session is Mr. Sunil Sharma, ex-IRS technical expert. He served as Additional Director Faculty and Course Director at National Academy of Direct Taxes and is an alumni of Harvard University. He's the next panelist on the session. I think post-lunch we should have more energy, no? And then moving on to the next panelist for the session, that's Mr. Arun Mishra, Special Secretary, retired, Government of Bihar. Mr. Mishra is a veteran VAT expert who was involved in the transition from sales tax to VAT and then from VAT to GST in various capacities. A regular member of the GST Fitment and Law Committees, retired as Special Secretary to the Government of Bihar. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Mishra. Okay, we're still awaiting his arrival. As soon as he's here, we'll have him on stage. And the last panelist on this session is Ms. Shruti Dvivedi Sodhi, Partner and Regional Head, Khaitan Legal Associates. Ms. Shruti has over 23 years of extensive legal experience, both globally and in India. She founded World and Law, an innovative construct that balances strategic lawyering with practical execution. That's Ms. Shruti Dvivedi Sodhi. Welcome to the panel, Ms. Shruti. With that, now the panel is complete. I leave it to the two anchors to moderate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon, friends. Generally, that happens after the lunch session. And you know, technology is always given such sessions. That has been my experience of handling technology and participating in workshops and seminars. So we have already been introduced to all the panelists and the moderators. In fact, we have one more panelist who is going to speak from World Bank office in Washington, D.C. We are trying to get him connected, and it hasn't happened so far. As and when he is able to get connected, we'll also get him here in this. His name is Mr. Anders Agersko. He's a head of preventive service unit at World Bank. Just a few minutes about the fast pace of technology which had changed completely the face of taxation in our country, especially in indirect taxes, which I had first experience of working with. From self-service, invoice level reporting, creation of outward and inward supplies, returns, reconciliation of ITC, and pre-drafted returns. Now, these were some of the things which were actually not thought of. And in the previous session, we heard Ritu talking about how such a thing could happen and could change the face of the tax system here. So today we are going to talk about how this automation and the availability of lots of data with both departments, direct taxes and indirect taxes, has led to things on both the sides. The department side, from where we have Manish, who is actually implementing it. We have Sunil, who has done this part. And though Shruti is from a legal consulting, but we will treat her as those representing the taxpayers. And similarly, Mr. Atul Gupta. Now, with these few words, what I'll suggest my co-panelists, we always speak 2-3 minutes on the subject, and then we have some questions which we'll put before the panel. Over to you, Atul.
Thanks. Hello. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Prakash Kumar. Very honestly, we've just started after lunch. Let me start and get some energy into this by telling you a automation joke. So, a plane got boarded, people got onto a plane, it was about to take flight, and announcement came, this is a fully automated plane. Fully automated, fully tested, rigorous testing has been done. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. That's what automation is all about, but very honestly, that was a joke, so that's not what we are talking about. Honestly speaking, when we talk in terms of automation, when it comes to the pandemic itself, I think the pandemic made a huge change in terms of ensuring that all of us got serious about what automation is. And in tax compliance, in tax reporting, really automation is at an inflection point. There is no choice in this matter as to whether or not you can automate. Deloitte did a tax transformation trend survey for 1 full year, getting 300 largest finance executives in the world of MNCs, of middle-level MNCs across Asia, Europe, USA. And what were their findings? What did they feel about tax compliance and automation? There were 2 or 3 things that they wanted to use technology for. Now, one was focusing on data for quality, automating processes, and rethinking operating models altogether. The second was leveraging the momentum of next-gen ERP. What is next-gen ERP? We're talking about ERP where data comes out straightforward for tax filing, which has tax-sensitized data. And the third was, what about tax authorities to turn digital? How should they be able to get their organizations to invest in technology? This was the third element that they wanted to ensure by talking about what's the future of automation in tax. Now, what with the coming of the pandemic, what with governments and digital, I should say revenue authorities taking to digitizing, which was much faster than the private sector expected. Definitely so in India. All that was left was, how do we manage this? 3 things happened. The entire work content, the workspace, and also the workforce and the workplace changed. We know about hybrid and remote working. Even the work content changed because the operating models were changing, and tax was required to now look not just in terms of giving tax advisory, but in adding to value addition in business itself. Tax efficiencies and business efficiencies expected out of tax, and automation was the way out. The third thing was the workforce itself. Today we are not looking at somebody who knows tax alone. We are looking at somebody who's a tax analyst as well, who understands part of the technology. So just to give you an example again, if tax is red and technology is blue, the need was for more and more resources who are purple really. The darker the grade of purple, those were the people which was the new age of tax compliance was looking at. So with this introduction, if you would like to.
Yeah,
pick
so
this
I would
up.
like to ask Manish to say a few words on this particular topic, his views on this.
Good afternoon, sir. Let me start by saying that I am at a safe place because whatever good is happening is in GSTN is happening on the foundation of what Mr. Prakash did. So he gets all the bouquets, and if there are errors, you can put that blame on me. How GST as a tax has fundamentally transformed can be gauged from the frequency with which compliance used to take place when GST came in this country. In VAT, generally monthly tax payment used to happen and annual returns used to be filed, which was assessed. The practice was to do annual assessment. Come GST, for the first time, businesses started maintaining their books on a monthly basis. Going forward, e-invoice is slowly drilling down the business. So what you have now is what is called instant reporting. So from the perspective of business, what is changing is that your transactions are recorded in your ERPs as well as the information is available with the tax administration the moment the transaction has happened, and therefore post facto change of any kind is not feasible. So businesses will have to attune to the idea of thinking compliance while doing business. That's how I will say that compliance is no more an ex post facto activity. It is an activity which has to be built along with thinking of the business. On availability of data, GSTN started the journey with internal analysis of all the return data which comes, and wherever there is discrepancy, it is pointed out to the taxpayer through tax administration. Going forward, data has started getting triangulated with CBDT data. There is already a provision in the GST law for third-party reporting, which eventually will happen, as you have seen in income tax that your banking transactions are shown to you. It is a kind of guide and prop to ensure that you report your transactions correctly in income tax. Going forward, businesses will also see more and more of data from various other sources which will indicate as to what is his likely turnover, what is his likely ITC availability. Then analytics is helping tax evasion detection in a major way as of now. But as I see, GSTN has large data, and it's only a question of time that at some point the data will be anonymized and analyzed industry-wise and placed in public domain for gaining efficiency in the business. So these are the larger trends which I see. One more larger trend on technology side is given the largeness of the data, perhaps cloud journey will have to happen. So these are the larger trends which I see happening in the tax digitization.
Thank you, Manish. So that was from the indirect tax side. Let me go to Sunil for the direct taxes, and then I will come to you, Shruti. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Sir. This is what happens with the technologists. So while I'm going to supposed to speak on technology, I just want to switch on the microphone. But that's okay, it happens. Very good afternoon to all of you. And I'm from the income tax side, so while we understand that technology is impartial or indifferent of the subject domain, but you, as I say that I'm from income tax side, it means that there is some specialized knowledge required when you come to automation of taxation or automation of compliance. So therefore, we will have to understand that the technology can only help so much. The specialized knowledge of the professionals from the either side will always remain the bedrock on which the technology can become a medium to make lives of the taxpayers easier. Having said that, just a couple of two things. I think this is always going to be a work in progress for decades to come, because I have seen for the last 2.5 decades, it has been a work in progress. And the moment we thought that we had reached somewhere, we found that we are more number of years behind what technology could offer. So I see it going, for another 20 to 25 years, when probably, I'm just imagining that the changes could actually, stabilize. We had a discussion about the new tax code. So this technology thing is going to be much more changing. And the other thing is there is always going to be a learning curve. Because as I said, there is specialized knowledge required, then there is heavy technology required, because the more technology you use, the easier is your life. And then there are data exchanges, the distributions, the correctness of it, the source of the data. There has to be a single source so that if we are wrong, everybody is wrong by the same manner. So all of us will have to understand what data offers, what technology is offering, what compliance requires, and there'll be problems like AIS came, we were lost, what is this? This contains my transactions which I never did, or there are transactions which I have done and it's not reflecting in AIS. Then it goes back to the tax administration, they figure it out, then they talk to the intermediaries, third-party reporting entities, and tell them, look here, what did you do with the data? How did you aggregate it? Then they go back and realize that they picked up databases जिसमें के ऊपर कि कहीं और से कुछ और transaction करके वो finally consumer को देते थे, and that piece is missing. So this is the whole challenge around which this automated compliance is going to progress. The last piece is the front-end applications, whether they are on WhatsApp, going future I see a lot of applications should be coming on WhatsApp and other apps, which will probably make the lives of the individual taxpayer better. And for the corporate side, the large taxpayers, I think there will have to be a systematic, systems-based automation, specific programs, interfaces written over the OEM accounting packages and the tax compliance framework that GSTN or the income tax department provides.
So we heard what direct taxes and indirect taxes are working on and what is the way forward. Let's listen to the viewpoints of those who are representing the taxpayers. Shruti, over to you. You can take this.
I think this is
working.
Yeah, truly humbled to be in this esteemed panel of tax experts. And I would say people who keep us taxpayers aided to be compliant and honest. So truly a privilege from that perspective. And also the other privilege that I'm riding on is to kind of be speaking on the coattails of all the experts who have already spoken on the matter with a little bit of a historical context of why a taxpayer's view is important. Taxpayer's view is important because historically, tax hasn't been the most favored subject in the minds of either the tax administrators from the perspective of is the taxpayer actually doing everything that they need to do to comply and declare what there is, and from a taxpayer's world, largely to see, okay, I shouldn't be penalized for doing well. So with that, for want of a better word, a little bit of a friction that exists in the two domains. I do believe that technology and automation and data could be that stepping stone for creating and building trust. From the tax administration side, because it brings in certainty, simplicity, and and predictability for a taxpayer. And from a taxpayer's perspective, because then, you know, they know what they're kind of signing up for and what is it that they will need to comply with. So largely, while it brings in all of that, I'm also going to borrow from Mr. Sharma and Mr. Gupta here. How do we create the purple? And how do we kind of bring in the efficiencies so that it kind of brings in value from what is getting created. And for that, it is not only about the quality of data, it is also about the source of data, and it is also about how is it all being put to use to enable the building of trust between a taxpayer and a tax administration. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. So there are certain issues which emerge out of whatever we have heard and the topic itself. And some of them are like the pre-filled forms which both tax departments are giving. Now, what has been the industry's experience on that part? So that's number one. Second, does it lead to enhanced efficiency, especially for the taxpayer? Of course, for tax department, it has that we are aware of. Is data-driven tax audit going to be the norm? That's another question which we have. And both direct taxes and indirect taxes people here talked about use of AI and machine learning for identifying the rotten apples. Now, do we use third-party data? That could be another question. So these are some of the questions. What Atul and I are going to do, we have a better job. We'll ask the three people here. And in fact, we thought we will have the third one as well, which is the view from other parts of the world. Unfortunately, we have not been able to connect with him. So the first question I'll ask Manish, Sunil, and Shruti is about pre-filled forms and quality of data. What has been the experience of industry and the tax department did? Sunil touched about that a little bit. That, okay, the AIS forms are there. But then where we are and what is the expectation? So if you can start with you, with Manish, okay? We'll start with Manish. Okay. And then we'll come to direct taxes, and then we'll ask Shruti. And I can also ask Atul, I'll treat him as taxpayer's representative.
Well, GSTN is also pretty much on the taxpayer side. That's how I at least view the kind of services which we have to provide. GSTR 3B auto-populated forms started becoming available around 18-19 months back. The experience which we have from the tax administration side is clearly visible in terms of data, that the errors which used to happen from the taxpayer side in terms of declaring their liability or availing ITC, those errors have substantially reduced. Editing is fully possible of these pre-filled forms. That said, the total quantum of the gap which used to happen and errors which used to happen before the forms were filled has substantially decreased. An area where the improvement is still feasible is in terms of occasional incidents where we come across taxpayers stating that the data which has been filled is not fully correct. And my experience has shown that there are two kinds of problems here. A is that some of it is not fully understood by the taxpayer, and often the reliability of auto-population perhaps can never be 100%. So how do we handle those situations is an area where improvement can take place. Going forward, pre-filled return will remain the norm, and in GST, since e-invoice is going to be the foundation from 1.5 to 2 years from now, more and more pre-filled form will remain the norm, and there will be only a few boxes where perhaps editing will be required to be done. Otherwise, the pre-filled form can be filled. So yes, it is a trend which is going to stay, and it is a trend which is beneficial for both sides, tax administration as well as for the tax administration.
And Sunil, what about the income tax?
So, as I said, it's work in progress. There is a learning curve involved. So basically, as taxpayers in income tax, it's like, it's a professional understanding of the subject which is required. So therefore, somebody is a doctor, somebody is an engineer. So we are not supposed to understand the income tax thing. So therefore, the involvement of the professionals, the specialists will always be there, and that can be done by people as well as technology. So when the income tax department started populating the databases by taking information about investments, incomes, expenditure through tax reductions, the house rent payments, etc. Give a few examples. We started seeing them in our AIS, and then of course there was this stock exchange transactions. So the sources started mattering. Like for example, the source of the stock transactions was depositories. But if you bought it somewhere and then transferred it to another depository and then sold it from another trading account, then obviously the purchase price is not mentioned. So probably all of your sales should be showing as profits. This is one example of how it happens. So then you get help of the professional and he tells you. So therefore it is important that if you start early, seeing early into your AIS, probably you could get some help where you don't understand. If you find something is wrong, it's because the data sources are not so refined and accurate. The people who are the third parties who are providing data, they also may not have understood it and may have provided wrong aggregation of the data. But this is my learning from the last 25 years, that these things start were low quality. At times you could say they are bad and useless, but actually if there was no electronic filing in 2003, where it was funny, there is no time to actually tell how rudimentary it was, but if we hadn't done that, we would have had no electronic compliance now, which is so much part of our lives. And then it's important that we start covering more and more data points so that if the taxpayer gets to see all their information at one place, probably they'll find its utility key, its encyclopedia. If there is something here, say 3 years from now, probably there'll be a situation where we'll feel that, oh, if there is something reflecting here, यहाँ पे कुछ है तो कहीं न कहीं मेरा होगा, मैं भूल गया हूँ. In fact, that has been my experience. Now I get all credits for the bank interest, which I used to just, sorry for this confession, I used to give it a rough estimate into my income tax accounts. Who's going to look into the bank accounts? But now AIS gives you that. So this is how the progression will happen. And the more third-party reporting systems we bring in, more useful pre-filled would be. There are two other aspects which I would like to highlight. One is that interfaces are very important. What interface the tax administration builds and what interfaces third parties are allowed to build and they build. The versatility of that will be very important. And there is another aspect which nobody actually rarely touches. I remember one of our erstwhile revenue secretaries, Mr. Hasmukh Adia, actually quoting it. He wanted everything to be transactional. He used to use this word transactional. And I fully understand what magic it had. Simply what he meant to say was that you give some information to taxpayer, then you tell him you go there and do this. Then you just offline him. You send him on a trail, he goes there, somebody rebuffs him, sends him back. So when you show him something, he should be able to complete the competing part of the transaction, the complementary part of the transaction there and then only. You should give that interface. So therefore, the pre-filling, this is not what has happened as yet, but this is why I'm saying this, that everybody can talk about it. And actually, there are a set of people who we used to interact with, they'll be around. And so if you make that transactional, what will happen is that then we will be able to complete our differences, put in there, there'll be a real-time checking from the database and give you the answer. And that's how you will complete.
So that is precisely is happening now in GST at the monthly level. In fact, I'll take a few seconds here. When we started first, the taxpayers under VAT used to file only gross data. There was no invoice level reporting. And initially people thought, oh, let me report because GSTR 2 and 3 are not there. Whatever we want, we can just report it. So first thing we did was, okay, what's the turnover in GSTR 1 and what is claimed in 3B? And similarly, what is the ITC claimed? And And we found lots of people were trying to game. So any new system comes, people try to game. Of course, all those things have been done away with. And also then data started flowing from customs. So all these have happened. Now the question is, you, both of you, Atul and Shruti, how it has helped the taxpayers, number one. In one, Manish mentioned that from 1 year period, now it has become 1 month. But apart from that, has the availability of data, especially the transactional data, led to improvement, business efficiency improvements? Atul first, and then I'll come to Shruti.
Yeah, but before I go there, I just had a question, in terms of, yes, getting GSTR 2A data, the reconciliation of input credits has gone very well over the period of time with the GSTN. Similarly with AIS, if we look at the information, and I'm sure most of the people who've used AIS would have found that large parts of those informations are nearly correct. Incomplete, possibly, as you rightly mentioned. But I had another question, and probably it's linked to the fact that somewhere down the line, when there are these glitches or these misses, as happened in the case of transitional credit in case of GSTN, why is the automation of law not factored in the glitches in law, glitches in this reconciliation, not factored in the legal parlance? What I'm trying to get at is, eventually we took 5 years where Supreme Court said you can take the transitional credit after 5 years. Supreme Court had to step in, while I think the revenue and the authorities knew very well that these were technical glitches. Now, how do we manage to make laws, particularly as automation increases, to ensure that the taxpayer tomorrow is not at the receiving end, and these kind of glitches in a way are self-provided in the law itself, rather than approaching to the Supreme Court and taking 5 years to actually get credits? So I had this notion which I thought it will be good to ask you, both Manish, yourself, and I think to you, Shruti.
Okay, on TRAN credit, please understand that it was not only the technical glitch was playing, which was really the driving force for Supreme Court decision. The decision is under Article 142, and therefore I will not want to consider it only a technical glitch as a reason. A larger question which was before the Honorable Supreme Court was this, that when a tax regime has changed, does the old credit become a vested right of the taxpayer? And if yes, do white line rules apply? That if there is a white line rule, you must comply within that. Please remember that in filing of TRAN, multiple extension of dates were given. I remember at least 5 extensions having been given for filing of TRAN 1. Therefore, it was fair for tax administration to assume that having given multiple opportunities, those who were diligent enough were able to file. Now coming to why Supreme Court had to intervene and why this exceptional handling is not built in law, is because at present the convergence between drafting of law and automation of law, which is required to happen, has not happened. It is more in the nature of law gets drafted first and thereafter it comes to the lap of automation. And automation is generally given the direction that build what is provided in the law. What is required perhaps is invariably that an add-on line that while a compliance is designed in automation, how will you handle the exception? I personally believe that therefore in automation, grievance handling is a very, very important component. We do it in a rudimentary manner and there is ticket, there is call center, etc. But it has to get kind of integrated in the law itself and in the IT platforms. If that is built, fairly large number of issues which you are raising will go away. So that's what my observation will be in relation to TRAN, gap between policy and technology, and how grievance handling can be integrated with the platforms.
So I would like to just clarify something because I was there in the hot seat at that time. It was not designed to take this data from the other tax department. If that was done, people were allowed to key in whatever they wanted. And we had seen some fantastic figures there. So if that was done at that time, these things wouldn't have happened. That's a major challenge, number one. And number two, many people did commit mistake of entering data into different fields, which led to challenges. And this was the first time they were doing it in an online manner for such a large thing. So let's not falter the technology for that matter.
Right.
It was the way it got implemented because of constraint of time.
Sure.
Let's go to Shruti and hear her views on this.
Good. So yeah, I'm stepping it into some some very interesting debate here. To kind of first speak to what you asked on the taxpayer's perspective vis-a-vis pre-filled forms, and then coming to you, Atul. Essentially, for sure, anything that makes a taxpayer's life easy. I mean, we've all seen the journey from 26AS to now AIS, and you know how it has very seamlessly created a framework to which, Atul, you said, we at least have the broader landscape. We may forget something, something may be incomplete, but that's where our diligence as a taxpayer lies. And you know, obviously, you know, it's kind of moved away from just the TDS to all other sources of income, like you said, Mr. Sharma, to your house rent incomes, to securities that you may have traded, et cetera, et cetera. And what it does is actually it gives me at least the broad heads under which I need to look at before I kind of say, hey, this has been my earnings and this is how I need to kind of comply with it. Borrowing from what you said about sources of data, third-party data, quality of data, how structured is it, all of those pieces will really play a large role in two aspects, as I see it, both as a taxpayer and a lawyer. One is, you know, how well and efficacious those pre-filled forms will be in enabling me to comply. And also, you know, with the, you know, taking the liberty of the impending legislation on data privacy that may be coming by as to, you know, how am I using, and the purposes for which the data that I have am I using? Am I just using it for compliance, or could there be a larger use? Of course, there is liberty to use it in a manner that supports and enables and aids administration, but it's also about being, you know, being present to the taxpayer's charter, you know, that we kind of allude to. To your point, Atul, on you know, how can the legal framework facilitate the implementation and the challenges that come with implementation of a new law? Technically, given the legal system is there to enable and aid and smoothen any areas of dispute that could arise as the new landscape is being treaded upon. Be it a process issue, be it a technology issue, be it a fundamental issue that, you know, a taxpayer may be wanting their voice to be heard on. Essentially, that opportunity of going to the legal system always exists, and it becomes the legal system's duty to then kind of navigate that and address it in the most seamless and again, that works for both parties concerned in a fair manner. So I would tend to agree with Mr. Sinha and Mr. Sharma around technology playing catch up, because law gets created first, and then you know, you are automating it post facto. Right. Point number one, and then very rightly, as said by Mr. Sharma, we will always play catch up with technology. So, you know, we are thinking automation and big data right now. What next dependencies and opportunities arise? I mean, you would know it better than any one of us here as to how that does. So I hope I've done some justice to your question.
So fair enough. Just one question more, and this is really, again, I think Mr. Prakash Kumar addressed that, asked that. We've seen GSTR 3B, 2A, we've seen AIS. What's the next level of automation that we are looking at? Are we looking at 3B partly being populated, Similarly, beyond AIS, what are we looking at?
This is a question more in the realm of what next the
Right.
policy will think. I personally believe that 3B has stabilized, 2B has stabilized, GSTR 1 has stabilized, and the journey which is actually taking place is e-invoice journey. So integrating and penetrating e-invoice will be the critical step. And you see, far too many experimentation, also the feedback which I get is, abhi to mera ERP theek hua tha, sir, fir aapne badal diya. So that's also not something which is a very conducive state to be, that you are always in a transient state. Going forward, e-invoice will hold the key. How much of automation and new ideas can be built around e-invoice? Second is that at present we are focused on B2B. When B2B should be done and whether B2C should be done before B2B, etc., is a subject on which there are divided opinions. Countries have gone different path. We have gone through B2B. Already you are seeing UPI payments growing exponentially, so it's only a question of time that B2C also will start getting aggregated and automated reporting happening. If B2B and B2C both get fully automated and integrated in GST system, and credit related provisions can be ironed out a little because they are not very amenable to reversal. The reversals are at present not very amenable to automation. Then what you are looking at is almost driverless, almost fully automated compliance. And then payments can be indicated that these are the kind of payments which can be made and moved on. So that will be the larger picture of compliance as I can imagine, with a disclaimer that this is not something which is part of any policy or any document.
He had asked you as well.
For me, okay. So one thing I would say is, probably it's also my obsession, that transactionalization. What we tend to do is to aggregate everything and then have it from income tax angle actually. I have no knowledge of GST, so I'm sure. So wherever we show the taxpayer the information, if we have a way of letting him respond there, and then actually taking that to the databases. When I say this, I'm saying this with the understanding that we do have data sources and databases from where these could be verified. So therefore, what should happen is that if I buy an LIC insurance, then my data should travel to the income tax department, and then it should show it to me. And then I should have the privilege to say yes or no to it, and accordingly I can put in there my argument or evidence. So there has to be, it shouldn't be seen only as grievance, there should be a technology-based dispute resolution system where blockchain smart contracts could come into play, and there then you will have, say, 5 crore out of 5.25 crore cases getting solved like this, and for 25 lakh cases you will get to the agents and the people. That's where I see, and then you cover all possible major instances, tax bases, the transactions related to which bring the incidence of income tax. Right. That's the main number one thing that I see.
So Atul, if I can answer some of the things. See, in GST system, it is self-correcting mechanism because it's been two people. For one, it is supply, others it basically is purchase. But in case of income tax, reporters are banks, financial institutions, so many of them, and that's not there. That's not going to be or impact their own business. So this we should always consider into whenever we are talking about it. The moment GSTN gets into B2C, they will also face the same problem because the reporting will be done by the third party. So this aspect has to be taken. It takes time for all the reporting agencies to start reporting. I mean, I have personal experience of what 26AS was in 2008 and what it is today. I mean, it has improved so much. Now, all this automation, availability of granular data, Shruti, I would like to ask you, how is it leading to efficiency improvements, business efficiency improvements?
You see, it is because technically, in terms of the way working capital and cash flow managements in the companies are doing. In fact, we as lawyers are actually also building it into contracts that, the minute, how, if you were to take an input tax credit from me, you better be actually doing and filing it on time, because otherwise, I may just have to penalize you because I get to bear the loss against it. So be it contractually creating those systems, be it giving me more predictability in managing my cash flow, and or my assessments, tax assessments or advanced tax payouts, etc. It's definitely leading to a lot more business efficiencies in how I plan my interactions or my coordination with my vendors at one end, as also for any income tax and any income tax assessment and payments that I need to make.
Let me ask the same question to Atul, because you also represent large number of taxpayers.
So it's a new topic that we're getting to, the data part. And how does data and its automation helping, apart from tax efficiencies, business efficiencies? Let me try to conjure up two examples. Let's look at, we all understand freight, and we know there's a good transport agency, you have to pay GST on those services. There is a reverse charge tax and there's a forward tax. Now, if you have the data as a business, how much do you pay on a reverse charge basis? How much do you pay GTA services on a forward charge basis? And you do an analysis. One is at a 5%, you can still take credit when you pay. The other is at 12%, the forward charge. Now the question here is, if you have the data and you analyze this, somebody would say, if I am paying 12% upfront, can I actually go to my vendor who provides me these services? Because at 12%, he gets the entire credit, but when I pay 5% on a reverse charge basis, while I'm entitled to the 5% credit, he is not entitled to any input credits. So it's a clear case where typically if I'm paying for transport, say from Delhi to Bombay, and I'm paying 10,000 rupees in each case, in one case it's 5% on a reverse charge, it's 12% in the case of forward charge, both are creditable to me. Yet, my vendor enjoys full credit in the case of 12%, and I will go back to him saying, I will no longer pay you 10,000 rupees. I'll pay you 9,500 because now you get full credit. So here is a case where I'm trying to procure business efficiencies in procurements. Similar, one more example I just thought of is case of vendors. Let's say I'm based in Rajasthan. I get material from UP. I get raw materials from AP as well. Both charge me, the price is the same, the tax or the GST is the same. Yet, when I do a data analysis, I find that I pay much more freight when the material or the raw material comes from, say, AP, which clearly shows I can go back and renegotiate or try and see whether I can procure closer so that I save money in terms of freight. So these kind of business efficiencies are something which data analytics will result in. So these are the kind of things that one should be looking at going forward.
Do we have some questions here? Because I don't know, the organizers didn't tell us what will be the mechanism for getting the questions. We have 16 minutes. Of course, I have some more questions for the panelists here. If there is any question, how do we get it here? Anyone from the organizer can tell us. Oh, in the previous session, it was told that it's coming through some other mechanism, WhatsApp or mentor-mentee. Okay, so let's take some questions and then we'll go for the next round. Yeah. Any questions here? इसका मतलब या तो सब समझ गए या बिल्कुल नहीं समझे हैं? Yes, please.
Well, let me respond little tangentially. Can questions ability. So can it happen? Yes, it can happen. Is there a policy thinking on this? At least I am not aware of.
No,
but
I can tell you there is none. But should there be
No, no,
policy thinking like this?
no, you see, it's difficult
As
to
you
say
said,
there is
law
none.
should be delivered. Law should be leading the cart now. You know, the horse should be technology, and law should probably be the cart.
I don't know. This is a very chicken and egg question, and I always say that they should work in a very integrated manner. But yes, there are places where law can be improved to achieve higher automation. This is one such area. Point taken. And when will it happen, etc., is a difficult question to answer. But these things do not happen in a very big bang way. What will happen is it will get experimented at one or two places where automation will be built, and then based on that experience, people become wiser, and that is how it happens. So in e-invoice, lot of these changes will be automatically thought of. At present, the thinking is stabilize e-invoice, penetrate it deeper, cover larger base with e-invoice, and then see where we have reached. The entire journey of GST has been learning by doing. So the next stage of, the next level of epiphany comes when we reach there. It is like a journey with a candle where you first take 4 steps and then the next 4 steps become visible. So that's how the journey has been. That's how it will remain.
So technically it is feasible, but there are certain challenges. Same HSN code, you will have some items which are treated at different rates. Now, how will the system know that this is the HSN code, which particular tax rate I should take? So that's the second one. Problem is reporting of correct HSN by the taxpayers. That has been a challenge. I'm not talking about the big taxpayers. They have money to buy software or have people who will do it. But for small and medium taxpayers, that has been a challenge. Once those are solved, then only once we attempted to reverse compile it and say, okay, this is the commodity, this will be the HSN code and what will be the rate. But then we encountered certain challenges, and that is what I was just trying to mention here. Is there any other question?
Sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
can you
hi.
pass the mic to him?
Sir?
Sir, this is a question for you, or maybe Mr. Sinha can give answer. See, what we have seen all over the world, the model of e-invoicing what India has adopted, many of the countries are looking that as ideal. And this journey, what you just said, that is something we are experimenting, something which is made in law, and thereafter we have implemented. Why can't be, there will be a system, but now we are 5 years in GST. Why can't the lawmakers, or there can be a mechanism at a council level, where if any change is proposed, maybe a earlier something to be given to GSTN, so that you people will be prepared for it. At the same time, the businesses also will have some kind of hint, so that we can implement it well in time. So many of the hassles, technological hassles, can be solved because of this. Is there anything of that sort can be done and can be proposed?
No, that's a great suggestion, but having seen more than 40 GST Council meetings, decisions are not taken like that. So all I can say that way, and nowhere they do it like this. Unless until you say, okay, this is going to be the draft, and then give time for looking at the challenges. But what council used to do, they used to ask us, okay, this is the decision. Is it implementable or not? At least I will give credit entire journey. In fact, when we were drafting GST laws, at that time also I was part of all the committees, and the question always used to be posed to us, will you have any difficulty in doing it? So that credit we must give. Any other question?
Sir? Yeah. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah, good evening. I have 2 points. Sir, one thing is on the new recently introduced amendments applicable from 1st of October. Sir, I find that now entire ITC mechanism has been made supplier-centric, to which I concur. But sir, I have one small input in that. Sir, if supplier does not file his return in time, or if he does not pay some part of tax, how can you disallow credit to all the recipients? Why can't we have a mechanism, one, where at the maybe GSTN level, we can identify as to what payment is not done and only specific suppliers recipient credit is disallowed. Because now we are going tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supplier. If any one of the supplier in my tier above has defaulted, credit of all the people under that line and all recipients would be disallowed. How can this will be manageable at the business level once this gets properly implemented? And maybe I can put the other question after this because it is on other part of GST.
Well, as you said, when it gets properly implemented, so you are conceding that at this point, at levels at tier 2 and 3, no such recovery is being made. See, this is a very, this is a classic debate which is taking place in GST, wherein the tax administration's perspective and the perspective of businesses are at variance. Tax administration's perspective is credit is not something which gets generated out of vacuum. Credit is essentially tax paid at stage before. So when there is no tax, then the entire trail of transaction is a sham transaction. That's how tax administrations think. Businesses will take a position that I do not have visibility beyond layer 1. And therefore, why are you kind of penalizing me for what has happened 2 layers behind me? Technology will somewhere come in and ensure that the visibility of the chain is made better available. But this is a debate which was also part of litigation under value-added tax. And it went right up to Supreme Court. So you have asked a question for which I don't think anyone can give you a very clear answer except that in GST, lot of information regarding the quality of supplier is available to you. Pick up your suppliers wisely.
Fine.
Okay, so this is a old problem, and simple thing is like, suppose I have not paid. Now, how will the system decide, okay, this much, 50% taxes which have been paid, where to pass it on, to which particular buyer? So that's not solvable by the system. Let's not expect things which cannot be solved by the system. In fact, that's there are lots of suggestions made that why don't you then proportionately divide it amongst all the further down the line people. That's not possible. You can't, then you are talking of ITC at invoice level. We are talking of return level, we are talking of invoice level. We have 7.5 minutes more, so let me just go around one more. I'll come back to you.
Okay, sir. Fine.
One more round, and that's about, we have all heard both tax departments are using AI, machine learning based risk assessment systems and for fraud detection. Now what, I'm sure they will not tell you the secret sauce, but at least they can tell what has been the impact of it so far, number one. And number two, what has been the experience of exchange of information between two tax departments which started in 2019?
Well, the results have been good for the tax administration, quite certainly. Results have also kind of made the taxpayers aware that tax administrations know, and that helps. And that is where I personally agree with Sunil that showing the taxpayer what I know has helped in a big way. More and more information the tax administrations bring on the table for taxpayers to clearly know as to how much I know helps both sides, because then the certain amount of compliance mentality improvement takes place. And if the information is transparently available, later date disputes also do not take place. As far as AI and ML journey is concerned, at present it is at the level where some of the basic technologies are being used. In ITC flow, perhaps greater use of AI ML is possible, and going forward we would see as to how it is happening. Rule-based AI ML, triangulation-based AI ML, data splicing, dicing, these things which you had started, all of them have led to multiple use cases. And what is happening is now we are at the beginning of every month clearly providing to tax administrations as to what are the kind of leads which they should follow from the perspective of administration. So a data-driven tax compliance verification is taking shape on GST side.
So just one question before Sunil answers that. Would this data-driven extend to tax audits in the future rather than physical audits? Are we looking at desktop audits going forward in considering even for income tax side, what with faceless assessments, even faceless appeals, are we looking at tax audits to be data-driven going forward? Because that would be significant service to a taxpayer.
So, should I answer? So, पहला दूसरा part. So, my understanding from whatever I have worked with, on and learned, this is inevitability. Today, if you think of filing a physical return, you're going to be in real trouble yourself. So, let's say 2032, probably this will be happening. But then there is a journey to be made. It's increasing. What will happen is that as data enrichment happens, the quality of data improves, and the flow of data becomes fast, then the coverage of audit will improve. Say, for example, the Form 3CDs and others,
Right.
what happens is that basically you input a PDF copy or something like that, you write something else where you physically submit, then you scan it. In your accounts, it's something else, the scanned copy is something else. Or when you digitize it, it's something else. These are clear-cut cases, actually. There have been surveys where we found that the data in 3CD electronically filed is completely different from what actual report was. So this has to improve. Once this improves, that will happen. I can see to that level where probably we are going to have real-time audits as well as pre-check audits at micro and distributed level. I mean, let me give you an example. You have APA, advanced pricing agreements, and you have advanced rulings, where the entity level, multi-year, the business concept, one thing, you pay 17%. Now, there will be 1,000 traces to it. So therefore, say 10 years from now, if we embraced blockchain technology properly and are not reluctant to it, I see that thing also happening wherever possible. You could do a pre-check and then done with that dispute coming in.
Because blockchain will give a audit trail.
So that brings me, just give me a minute, I'll explain the first part also. The AI ML, the based fraud prevention techniques. There you see it as 2-3 parts. One is the data part, the other one is the ML model, the computer intelligence. So computer intelligence is not so much that is there in the government, but it will come. We haven't even scratched the surface. The data part is very strong. It's just every entity that processes data, does financial transactions, has data. Now this journey has been there for the last 5 years, 7 years. Let me add 2 years when I have not been there. So it's just that now they have to start talking in a data exchange manner where they don't misunderstand the data and are able to make intelligent use of it. The ML model, any technology company can come and train your model for that. They are ready-made available. So that's how it's going to change. So therefore, if you are not offline, I think in coming years it will be impossible to escape the eyes of the tax authorities. That's how we see the future.
I would like to just add here, the first use of ML was after some 5 lakh taxpayers RC was cancelled. So we had a sample, labeled data 5 lakhs, where the cancellation was done. We also had where the visit was made and they were found to be working. So we had those guys who were not existing on paper, I mean, they were not there on the place, and those who were there, those who were filing, those who were not filing. And this was used to prepare the first model, which is currently, I mean, which was being used at that time, and Manish can tell us more, which now was used to generate risk of a new taxpayer coming into the system. Similarly, once you have first audit completed, and you have a data on, say, for example, if they do 5%, they will have 5 lakhs, a little more than 5 lakh labeled audit results. Either you found something, you did not find something. Now, based on this, then they will have the next model where a new return will be passed through that model and it will score whether to pick it up or not. And then you don't need to wait for the year. You just do it after the return has been filed. That's the way it is being done, and I'm certain GSTN leadership will be working on the moment first set of audits are completed. We are coming close to the time because we have to honor this. If you have any passing closing remark, anyone of you, please. Else, I'll just thank everyone and anything.
So my limited point is that I think automation, data sanctity, these are things which have to be seen from a business perspective. It's not as if automation is the same need for each business. There has to be first an assessment. There needs to be a thought around data in terms of its sanctity, its security. It's an entire journey which requires certain amount of thought process, certain amount of making sure that each function in a business thinks alike and you're leveraging the business processes even for tax compliance. Even the ERPs are being thought of as if it can give tax sensitized data. So this kind of an automation journey is something which I think is the takeaway for us, in the sense that we need to think of it differently rather than thinking of it in an ad hoc manner. That's one part. The second part is 5 years from now, and this is again a question, can we look at, because of automation, a merging of the two tax departments? I think it's probably a journey again, but something which they should start thinking about, just as we look at HMRC. Can we look in India where the two departments who have now started exchanging information, can they at some point in time use a single source? So for GSTR 2B and tax deduction at source, the taxpayer doesn't have to pay, doesn't have to twice submit the data. I mean, you have clause 44 in 3CD, which actually requires that reconciliation. Are we looking at the future? I think we should.
In fact, before that, we have separate solutions today, one for direct taxes, one for indirect taxes. That, in fact, should be done first, because your invoice, which is the basic building block, how it is to be treated. GST is very straightforward. But for income tax, how do you treat it? And from there itself, it should come out, okay, this is your income tax return and this is your GST return. Now with this, I would like to thank my co-panelists, all co-panelists, and my co-anchor for the excellent discussion which we had here. And also to the people here who asked questions. I'm sorry we couldn't take all the questions. And I would like to thank on behalf of all of us, TIOL, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists and to our moderators for conducting this session so well and keeping it so interactive with the Q&As incorporated in it. I would like to request TIOL team to please come on the stage and present a small token of thanks to all our panelists. And before we let them go, I request all the panelists to please pose for a group photograph. Thank you to all the panelists for making time out and being here for the TIOL Tax Congress, and for the audience for being such an interactive audience and coming up with the Q&As through the session.